I watched her lips move as she told the judge I'd abandoned our children, and I thought about the 3 years I'd spent screaming into the void. Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Real stories, real justice, no sugarcoating. You know what? I notice many of you watching haven't hit that subscribe button yet. Here's the thing, we drop stories like this every single day. Stories about people who got played, got smart, and got even. If you want to see how these situations really end, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Vincent, I'm 41, and I'm a civil engineer. 3 years ago, my marriage to my ex-wife, Catherine, ended after I discovered she'd been having an affair with her personal trainer. We have 2 kids together. Lily was 7 when this started, and Owen was 5. They're everything to me. They've always been everything to me. The divorce was brutal. Catherine didn't just want out. She wanted to punish me for having the audacity to file first. She wanted the house, most of my retirement, and primary custody. Her strategy was simple: make me look like a terrible father. Make it seem like I'd never been involved in their lives. Make the court believe I was too focused on work to care about my own children. But I'd been documenting everything since the day I found the texts between her and Travis, her trainer. Every conversation, every exchange, every attempt to see my kids. I'm an engineer, I think in systems, in evidence, in proof. I knew this was coming. The custody arrangement during the separation gave us 50-50 time. 2 weeks with her, 2 weeks with me. It worked for exactly 1 cycle. After the kids spent their first 2 weeks with me, Catherine started making excuses. Owen had a cold. Lily had too much homework. There was a birthday party they couldn't miss. The exchanges got tense. Then they got hostile. Then they stopped happening altogether. She blocked my number 3. Months into the separation, I found out when I tried to call the kids to say goodnight and got a recording saying the number was no longer in service. I texted, nothing. I sent emails to her personal account. They bounced back. I tried her work email, no response. I showed up at the house. She'd changed the locks. She called the police. They told me I couldn't be there without her permission, even though my name was still on the deed. Even though I'd paid for half of everything in that house. Even though my kids were inside and I just wanted to see them for 5 minutes, her lawyer sent a letter saying I was harassing her, that my behavior was erratic and concerning, that she feared for her safety and the safety of the children. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. She was building a narrative, and every time I tried to push back, I was feeding it, so I stopped showing up at the house. I stopped sending emails that could be twisted into evidence of harassment. Instead, I did something simple, something methodical. Every single day at 7 in the evening, I attempted a FaceTime call to both kids. I used my iPad so I could take screenshots of every rejected call, every blocked attempt, every notification that said the recipient was unavailable. I kept a spreadsheet. Date, time, device used, outcome, every single call logged. I did this for 1,095 days straight. 3 years, not a single day missed, not a single call answered. I hired a private investigator 6 months into the separation. His name was Leonard, and he'd worked custody cases for 20 years. He told me the courts see parental alienation all the time, but proving it is another story. You need documentation. You need consistency. You need to show a pattern that can't be denied. Leonard tracked Catherine's movements. He photographed her at restaurants, at Travis's apartment, at her parents' house with the kids. He documented school events I wasn't told about. Birthday. Parties I didn't know were happening. Soccer games where my son looked for me in the stands and I wasn't there because Catherine never sent the schedule. I reached out to the kids' schools directly. I got myself added as an emergency contact. I requested access to their academic records. I asked to be notified about parent-teacher conferences, school plays, field trips. Catherine tried to block it, but legally she couldn't. I was still their father. I still had rights. School secretary, a woman named Gloria, saw what was happening. She'd been working there for 30 years. She'd seen this exact scenario play out dozens of times. She started forwarding me information Catherine was getting. School newsletters, permission slips, event calendars. She never said much, but I could tell she knew what was going on. I attended every event I was told about. I sat in the back. I never caused a scene. I never approached Catherine or the kids. I just wanted them to see me. To know I hadn't forgotten them. To know I was still fighting. Catherine's lawyer filed for a restraining order after I showed up at Owen's school soccer game. The filing claimed I was stalking her, showing up at places she frequented, making her feel unsafe. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I brought every piece of documentation I had. Photos from Leonard showing I'd been at public school events. Emails from Gloria confirming I'd been invited. Registration confirmations showing I'd signed up as a parent volunteer. The judge dismissed the restraining order request. She looked at Catherine's lawyer and said something I'll never forget. She said evidence matters more than narratives. She said parents have a right to attend their children's public school functions. She said if Catherine wanted to keep me away, she'd need to prove I was actually dangerous, not just inconvenient. Catherine's face went red. She stared at me from across the courtroom, like I'd betrayed her by defending myself, like I was supposed to just accept being erased from my kids' lives because she decided that was easier for her, but the damage was done. For 18 months, I'd had almost no contact with Lily and Owen. They were getting older. Lily was 9 now. Owen was 7. I was missing everything. First days of school, lost teeth, growth spurts, inside jokes. The 1,000 tiny moments that make up childhood I kept calling every single night. 7 p.m., FaceTime attempts to both kids. Screenshot, log the data. Moved to the next day, my lawyer, a woman named Patricia, told me family court was slow. That judges preferred to maintain the status quo unless there was clear evidence of harm. That Catherine's legal strategy was to run out the clock to make me give up, to make the separation so long that reunification became difficult. But I'm an engineer. I don't give up on a problem because it's hard. I solve it step by step. The final custody hearing was scheduled for early November. 3 years after Catherine first blocked my number. 3 years after I'd started documenting every rejected call. Patricia told me to prepare for a fight. Catherine's lawyer was known for being aggressive, for painting fathers as absent or dangerous, for winning primary custody for her clients. The courtroom was on the 3rd floor of the county courthouse. It was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights. Beige walls. A bench for the judge, tables for the lawyers, chairs for everyone else. Catherine sat on the left side with her lawyer, a woman in her 50s named Diane who wore an expensive suit and had a reputation for never losing. I sat on the right side with Patricia. I had a folder in front of me. Inside was a 3-inch stack of printed call logs, screenshots, and timestamp documentation. I also had my iPad fully charged with every piece of digital evidence ready to present. The judge was a woman in her early 60s named Judge Callahan. She'd been on the family court bench for 15 years. Patricia had told me she was fair but tough, that she didn't tolerate games, that she cared about one thing above all else, what was best for the children. Catherine's lawyer stood first. She painted a picture of a devoted mother who'd been trying to protect her children from an erratic, absent father. She said I'd never been involved in their lives, that I worked 60-hour weeks and barely knew their teachers' names, that I'd missed birthdays and holidays, that I'd failed to pay child support on time, that Catherine had been forced to shoulder the burden of parenting alone. She presented a timeline of my supposed absence. Dates I hadn't attended school events, dates I hadn't called, dates I hadn't shown up for scheduled custody exchanges. It looked damning. It looked like I'd walked away from my kids and never looked back. Diane gestured to Catherine, who was sitting there looking dignified and wounded. She talked about the emotional toll it had taken. The nights Owen cried asking where Daddy was. The way Lily had stopped mentioning me altogether. The therapy bills. The struggle to explain to 2 young children why their father didn't want to see them anymore. Judge Callahan listened without expression. She took notes. She asked a few clarifying questions. Then she turned to Patricia and asked if I had a response. Patricia stood. She's in her late 40s, calm and precise. She said we had extensive documentation that would contradict every claim made by opposing counsel. She said the narrative being presented was not just false, but deliberately constructed to alienate me from my children. Diane objected. She said we were attacking Catherine's character without evidence. Judge Callahan sustained the objection and told Patricia to focus on facts. Patricia nodded. She asked if she could present exhibits. Judge Callahan agreed. Patricia walked to the court clerk and submitted a USB drive. She explained it contained 3 years of time-stamped FaceTime call attempts, all rejected or blocked. She asked permission to display the evidence on the courtroom screen. Judge Callahan allowed it. The clerk loaded the files. The screen on the wall behind the judge lit up. The first image was a screenshot from my iPad. It showed a FaceTime call attempt to Lily. The timestamp read 7:00 p.m. on the day after Catherine blocked my number. The status said call declined. Patricia advanced to the next image. Another declined call the next day, same time. Then the next day, then the next. She scrolled faster. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Every single screenshot showed the same thing. Call attempt, rejected, call attempt, rejected. Over and over and over, Patricia stopped on a random date 8 months into the separation. She zoomed in on the timestamp. She turned to Catherine's lawyer and asked if she disputed the authenticity of the evidence. Diane hesitated. She said she'd need time to verify. Patricia said she had the raw metadata from the iPad's backup files if verification was necessary. Judge Callahan asked how many call attempts were documented. Patricia said 2,847, 1,095 days, not a single day missed, not a single call answered. The courtroom went silent. Even the clerk stopped typing. Patricia let that number hang in the air. Then she went further. She submitted phone records from my carrier showing every outbound call attempt. She submitted screenshots of text messages I'd sent to Catherine begging her to let me talk to the kids. Messages where I offered to come to the house just to wave through the window. Messages where I promised I wouldn't cause a scene, wouldn't ask for anything, just wanted to hear their voices for 5 minutes. None of the messages had been answered. Patricia presented emails I'd sent to Catherine's personal and work accounts. Subject lines like, "Please let me see Lily and Owen," and "I just want to know they're okay." Every single email either bounced back or went unanswered. She showed documentation from the schools. Proof that I'd signed up for every newsletter, every parent portal, every volunteer opportunity. Proof that I'd attended every event I'd been notified about. Proof that Gloria, the school secretary, had been forwarding me information because Catherine had tried to cut me out entirely. Patricia submitted photos from Leonard showing me sitting alone in the back of the gymnasium during Lily's choir concert. Photos of me standing on the sideline during Owen's soccer games. Photos of me parked across the street from the house on Christmas morning because I wanted to see the kids open presents, even if it was just through the window. Diane tried to object. She said the photos proved I was stalking her client. Patricia countered that a father attending his children's public school events and sitting in his car on a public street was not stalking. Judge Callahan agreed. Patricia wasn't done. She presented bank statements showing every child support payment made on time, in full, for 3 years straight. She presented receipts for birthday gifts I'd sent that were never acknowledged. She presented medical records showing I'd kept both kids on my health insurance and paid every uncovered expense Catherine submitted. Then Patricia did something I hadn't expected. She called Gloria to the stand. Gloria walked in looking nervous. She was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, glasses on a chain around her neck. She took the oath and sat down. Patricia asked her how long she'd worked at the school. Gloria said 31 years. Patricia asked if she knew me. Gloria said yes, I was Lily and Owen's father. Patricia asked if I'd been involved in the kids' school lives. Gloria said I'd been trying to be, that I'd signed up for every communication list, that I'd attended every event I'd been told about, that I'd asked her multiple times for the school calendar because I wasn't getting information from the primary parent. Diane objected. She said Gloria's testimony was biased. Judge Callahan overruled. She wanted to hear what the witness had to say. Patricia asked Gloria if she'd ever seen behavior from me that concerned her. Gloria said no, that I'd always been polite and respectful, that I never caused disruptions, that I just wanted to be part of my children's lives. Patricia asked if she'd observed Catherine's behavior. Diane objected again. Judge Callahan sustained it this time. Patricia thanked Gloria and sat down. Diane declined to cross-examine. Patricia turned to me and asked if I'd like to address the court. I stood. Judge Callahan asked me to approach the stand. I was sworn in. I sat down and looked directly at the judge. Patricia asked me to describe my relationship with my kids before the separation. I talked about bedtime stories, about teaching Owen to ride a bike, about helping Lily with her math homework, about Saturday morning pancakes and Sunday afternoon hikes, about being there for every scraped knee and bad dream and first day of school. I talked about how it felt when Catherine blocked my number, how I'd panicked, how I'd tried everything I could think of to reach them, how I'd been told by her lawyer that my attempts to contact my own children were harassment. Patricia asked me why I kept calling every single day even though the calls were never answered. I said because I needed my kids to know I hadn't abandoned them. That someday when they were old enough to ask questions, I'd be able to show them proof that I never stopped trying, that I never gave up, that I called every single day for 3 years because I loved them and I wasn't going to let them believe I'd walked away. My voice cracked on the last sentence. I hadn't meant for that to happen. I took a breath and steadied myself. Diane stood for cross-examination. She asked why I hadn't filed for contempt of court earlier if I believed Catherine was violating the custody order. I said because I didn't want to make things worse. Because I was afraid that pushing too hard would give her ammunition to paint me as aggressive. Because I was trying to prove I could be patient and reasonable. Diane asked why I'd hired a private investigator to follow Catherine. I said I hadn't hired him to follow her. I'd hired him to document my presence at the kids' public events so there'd be proof I was trying. She twisted that into surveillance. Patricia objected. Judge Callahan sustained. Diane asked if I'd ever missed a child support payment. I said no. She asked if I'd ever been late. I said no. She asked if I had the bank records to prove it. I said yes, they'd already been submitted as evidence. Diane sat down. She looked frustrated. Judge Callahan asked if Catherine wanted to testify. Catherine stood. She was sworn in. She sat down and looked at her lawyer. Diane asked her to describe her experience as a single mother. Catherine talked about how hard it had been, how exhausting, how she'd had to do everything alone because I wasn't there, how the kids had struggled emotionally because their father had abandoned them. Patricia stood for cross-examination. She asked Catherine when she'd blocked my number. Catherine hesitated. She said she couldn't remember exactly. Patricia submitted phone records showing the exact date. Catherine said she'd done it because my calls were harassing her. Patricia asked how many calls I'd made before being blocked. Catherine said dozens. Patricia asked if she had proof of that. Catherine said no, she deleted them. Patricia asked if those dozens of calls were really attempts to speak to my children. Catherine said they were attempts to control her. Patricia asked if Catherine had ever allowed me to speak to the kids on the phone during the 3 years of separation. Catherine said no. Patricia asked why. Catherine said because the kids didn't want to talk to me. Patricia asked if she'd ever asked them. Catherine said she didn't need to ask, she could tell. Patricia presented the 2,847 call logs again. She asked Catherine if she'd been the one declining the calls. Catherine said she hadn't declined anything. Patricia asked who had access to the kids' devices. Catherine said she did. Patricia asked if the kids had their own phones. Catherine said no, they used her iPad when they needed to contact anyone. Patricia asked if Catherine had blocked my number on her iPad. Catherine said she'd blocked me on her phone, not the iPad. Patricia asked how I could have been calling the iPad if the kids didn't have their own devices. Catherine stuttered. She said I must have been calling the wrong number. Patricia pulled up the call logs on the screen. She showed the contact names. Lily and Owen. She asked Catherine if those were the kids' contact entries in my phone. Catherine said yes. Patricia asked how I could be calling the wrong number if I was calling the saved contacts I'd had for years. Catherine didn't have an answer. Patricia asked if Catherine had told the kids I was calling. Catherine said no. Patricia asked why not. Catherine said because she didn't want to upset them. Patricia asked if refusing to tell the kids their father was trying to contact them every single day for 3 years constituted parental alienation. Diane objected. Judge Callahan sustained but looked thoughtful. Patricia asked if Catherine had prevented me from attending school events. Catherine said no. Patricia submitted the documentation showing Catherine had tried to have me removed from the school's contact list. Patricia asked if that was consistent with wanting me to be involved. Catherine said she'd been trying to protect the kids from confusion. Patricia asked if Catherine had received the birthday gifts I'd sent. Catherine said yes. Patricia asked if she'd given them to the kids. Catherine hesitated. She said she'd told them the gifts were from her parents. Patricia asked why. Catherine said because she didn't want the kids to feel obligated to a father who wasn't present. Patricia asked if keeping gifts from me and telling the kids they were from their grandparents was honest. Diane objected. Judge Callahan overruled. She wanted the answer. Catherine said she'd done what she thought was best. Patricia asked one final question. She asked if Catherine believed she had the right to decide unilaterally that I shouldn't be in my children's lives. Catherine said she'd been protecting them. Patricia said that wasn't the question. She asked again if Catherine believed she had the right to make that decision alone. Catherine said yes. Patricia sat down. Judge Callahan asked if there was anything else. Patricia said no. The judge asked if Diane had any more witnesses. Diane said no. Judge Callahan said she'd review the evidence and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. She dismissed everyone. I walked out of the courtroom and didn't look at Catherine. 2 weeks later, Patricia called me. She said the ruling had come in. Judge Callahan had awarded me primary custody. Catherine would have supervised visitation twice a month until the kids were reintegrated and comfortable. The judge had written in her decision that the evidence of parental alienation was overwhelming. That Catherine had systematically and deliberately cut me out of the children's lives without justification. That her testimony had been inconsistent and contradicted by documented facts. The judge ordered family therapy for all of us. She ordered Catherine to pay my legal fees. She ordered make-up parenting time to account for the 3 years I'd lost. She ordered both kids to be given access to their own phones so I could contact them directly. Catherine appealed. The appeal was denied. I picked up Lily and Owen 6 weeks after the ruling. They were quiet in the car. They didn't know me anymore. Lily was 10 now. Owen was 8. I'd missed so much. We started slow. I didn't push. I didn't demand affection or explanations. I just made dinner and asked about school and let them explore the house I'd bought after the separation. The house I'd set up with their own rooms even though I didn't know when I'd see them again. It took months. Lily was angry. She didn't understand why I hadn't been there. I showed her the call logs. I showed her the screenshots. I explained that I'd tried every single day, that I'd never stopped, that her mother had made a choice and I'd spent 3 years fighting to undo it. Owen cried. He said he'd thought I didn't love him anymore. I told him I'd never stopped loving him, that I'd sat in parking lots just to catch a glimpse of him, that I'd attended every soccer game I knew about, that I'd called every single night even though the calls never went through because I needed him to know I was still there. It's been 8 months since they moved in. Things are better. Lily smiles now. Owen hugs me goodnight. We're rebuilding. Catherine sees them twice a month under supervision. She hasn't apologized. I don't think she ever will. But that's not my problem anymore. I kept every single call log, all 2,847 screenshots. I keep them in a folder on my desktop. I probably don't need them anymore, but I can't bring myself to delete them. They're proof. Proof that I never gave up. Proof that I fought for 3 years. Proof that love doesn't quit even when every door is slammed in your face. If you're going through something like this, document everything, every call, every text, every attempt. The courts move slowly, but evidence speaks louder than accusations. Stay calm, stay consistent, and never stop fighting for your kids.